we're still missing 20 people, but I can't wait any longer. I do have 10 minutes, so let's jump. My name is Martin, and I spent last 2 years preparation for the CTA board. I didn't do any single certification except that. So once I passed the CTA, I said, okay, what's next? And I saw the Slack, the most expensive acquisition ever, which was just a chat tool. So what's in there? So I decided to go for the Slack certifications. I passed all 3 of them, and this session should be basically about what I learned and what I found out might be interesting for the Salesforce partners. This is my life with Slack. The workspaces on the left-hand side doesn't fit on my screen. The channel names are a mess. When I need to find something, I have big trouble to find something. And there is a lot of communication going in the DMs. Nobody has a clue. And then I'm getting messages like this, some link. I have no clue what's going on. I need to stop my work. I need to click the link, log in into the org, find out what is it about, and then somehow handle it. And that's something I don't really like. So like all these things, like, okay, Slack is a mess, and there is no business for the Salesforce partners. This slide is taken from the Slack certification, one of them, and it basically shows the future. The chatter will stay here for a while, and the Slack will be the main networking tool. Both of the tools share the same asynchronous thing, and chatter should be more about the records, and Slack should be more about the processes. That makes sense to me. So that's where I got hooked up. The first one on my list was the Slack Certified Administrator, and the exam was not interesting at all. It was all about type of licenses, what the licenses will allow you to do, which license you need to have if you want to automatically provision and deprovision users. But then there was a few interesting parts, like the channel name structure, that you should follow some structure because it makes sense to the, or it will make sense to the users. How to behave on Slack, which was mind-blowing to me. So you all probably already got coached by the thread police that you shouldn't use the threads. But what was more interesting for me was the strong push to use the emoticons. That thumbs up and thumbs down is more than enough. You don't really need to write anything, and it's quicker as well. The things about the third-party application. Okay, third-party application, who cares? And the digital headquarter, like, I didn't get that. So then I passed the Slack certified consultants, and I realized that when you have a big enough client, it might be a good reason to learn Slack because there is a business behind. And the business behind is about how to separate the workspaces and how to make the workspaces work in a way that it makes sense to the users as well. How to enable the users so they know which workspace to use for what. And at the end, the Slack Connect, which allows to connect the companies together. So it was more interesting, but it still didn't really click. And then I passed the Slack Certified Developer. Originally, I thought it's way over my head. All the limits, tokens, throttling of the API requests. Too much. But then it was the moment. The moment was that when they showed me the application inside the Slack. And I realized that it's not just the application will write something into the Slack, but I can really have the dashboard in my Slack, and I can do the shallow work. That's the moment when the digital headquarter clicked in. This is the system for the shallow work, where I see my task, where I do the quick approval, I change the ownership, whatever. And then if I need to focus more, I go to Salesforce. The message in Slack doesn't have to be just a text message. It can be nicely formatted. And if you remember the screen I showed you with the long link with no information, would I got a message like this, I would know what the case is about, what was the last command, I can quickly act on it, and I don't really have to go into Salesforce and spend my time there. This is what the shallow work is. I will quickly make a decision and I will pass it to someone, or I will reply, or whatever. So that's where it starts clicking, because as a Salesforce consultants, when we just improve the notifications a bit, it might be super useful for the users, because suddenly it brings value. Then I learned about the block kit, which is some kind of language in the Slack which allows you to format the messages. And you can easily, as a user, just use the element on the left-hand side, put it on the screen, design, as a user experience designer, how the message should look like, and just pass the code which is on the right-hand side to the developer and say, hey, send a message which will look like this. And it will look awesome for the users. Wow. Then I start playing with it a bit more, and I found out there are a few apps for the Slack. If I'm not mistaken, there are like 4 of them. That is the Slack for Salesforce, which you install into a Slack, which allows you to do something. Then you install the counterpart into Salesforce as well. And when you do this combination, it will allow you to link the specific conversation to the record in Salesforce, which is kind of manual, but it's better than nothing, and you can really have the conversation from Slack linked to the record in Salesforce. Then you have the Sales Cloud and Service Cloud applications, which allows you, and it comes with a flow, that when you have a case or opportunity in Salesforce, it can pass the message into Slack, into a specific channel. It can be nicely formatted, and the people can work on it. And then there is this swarming thing, that for each case or for each opportunity, it will create a separated channel in Slack where the people will communicate. And you can surface the content of the channel in Salesforce, so people in Salesforce can see what's going on in a chat. And then you can automatically archive it when the case is closed or the opportunity is closed won. All of these you achieve with the flow which came as part of the package. So you don't really need to develop anything huge. You just use what's provided. So it's the linking to records, that's the components you put on the Lightning page which surface what's in the Slack, the flows. And then there is the unofficial sf.com, which comes with all the extra components you can use in the flow. And one of the components allows you to use the block kit as well. So the messages you are sending via the flow into the Slack can really be nicely formatted and can bring value to the user. You can still use the email if you want to communicate with the Slack. So you just send email to a specific address, and it will appear in a Slack. So that's the easiest way of integration. And you can use the screen flow from Slack as well. So it will create a button in Slack which will call your screen flow in Salesforce, and then you are back in Salesforce. And then obviously you have the heavy things like the callbacks and listening to the event and unfurling. I'm still not able to pronounce it. But basically when you paste a link in Slack, as the guy on the first screen did, it will automatically recognize the structure and it will call your application, which will provide the extended information. And those are the moments we can develop, and we probably should develop as the consultants to have a better experience for the users. So my takeaways is that for the small orgs, there's a business for you as a consultant as well. You will give them the advice, you will set up some basic information, you will show them how to use the Salesforce application or Sales Cloud application for Slack to just get the notification into Slack about new opportunities and these kind of things. And basically teach them how not to get lost. For the bigger organization, you do the same, just on a bigger scale. And then you have the advanced orgs where the customers need to get. And that's the moment where you have all the fun with creating the custom things and making it really work for the customer. And it's not that hard at the end, even though I started the talk about the developer exam with all the limits and these kind of things. So it's at the end quite easy for the developers. But the big mind shift for me was the user experience. So you can improve it a lot. And with that, I wish you a good luck. and do implement Slack. Thank you.